What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Clemente Collector. And today I have a special guest who's been on the channel before. His name's Howard Chasser. He is a dealer, and he's also a Clemente collector. And I think you guys are going to really want to stick around for this conversation. So today we're going to be talking about the Strongsville show that just happened a week ago. We're also going to talk about just his opinion as a dealer right now, what the market's looking like. Preparing for the national. We're about three months away from the national. It'll be here before we know it. And just also talking about possibly how SGC recently got acquired by collectors, and just asking from a dealer standpoint how Howard feels about that. So it should be a really good conversation. I know some people are probably got way too much content from the Strongsville show, so that'll only be a small part of this conversation. So Howard, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me again, Theo.
Cool, man. So obviously we saw each other at Strongsville. Have you done any shows since, or is that the last show you've done?
That is the last show I did. The next show I'll be at will be Monroeville in a couple of weeks.
Nice. I can't wait. I'll be there. Okay, so the Monroeville show is a Pittsburgh show, but it happens twice a year. Let's get right into it, though. Before we talk about Strongsville, let's just talk about your opinions, maybe a little bit about the current market, the current vintage market. So last year we talked about it at a similar time of the year. How do you feel the vintage market is right now, maybe compared to last year? Is it up, down, or about the same, do you feel?
I'm gonna say it's a very interesting marketplace. And I'll expand on that. I think parts of the market are up. I think parts of the market are down.
Okay.
And the part that's interesting, and this has been going on really since COVID. I think when the COVID explosion happened, a lot more people threw their hats in the ring. There were all of a sudden a lot more dealers, a lot more people trying to make a quick buck. And the auction houses also expanded the number of auctions they did from somewhere between 2 and 4 a year to all of a sudden it seemed like they were doing them every month.
Wow.
And the COVID boom has definitely subsided. Demand, I would say, is still considerably stronger than pre-COVID. I think there's a lot more people in the marketplace than pre-COVID. But I don't think there are as many as during COVID, or as active as during COVID, because during COVID, people had nothing to do and nothing to spend money on. So a lot of time and a lot of money got spent in the hobby. Now there's lots of other things pulling people's wallets and pulling people's attention. So, so even for people who are still in it, they're not as actively in it. Combine that with, I would say, not too many of the dealers that jumped in that I've seen have gone away. And the auction houses are still pumping out the auctions. Now you have throw in, you have Whatnot and Instagram and Facebook and all these other venues. It's theoretically, you could buy cards 24/7 someplace. And I think that adds to already an existing imperfect marketplace a lot more room for imperfection. And what I say by that, or what I mean by that, is if you think about the stock market as close to a perfect market as exists, where all the buyers and all the sellers are coming to one place, and that helps control the price very, very specifically to supply and demand. In the baseball card market, that doesn't exist, not even close. So you could have a guy out in California that wants a card that a guy in New York is set up at a show selling, but he doesn't know it. And if at the show is the only place the guy has it, maybe somebody's going to come in and start throwing comps at him and start, negotiating whatever. And the guy in New York may feel like, wow, I've had this card for however long. All right, let me negotiate. Let me sell this card. Whereas if he was able to connect with that California buyer, maybe he would have been able to get a better price. So there's a lot of that in a lot of different ways in this marketplace. And it almost becomes problematic because I think people have become over reliant on comps. When I say comps, I'm talking about going to some place like VCP or eBay sales, and looking at public sales, right? And the last, and what I hear very frequently, the last one sold for this. So there's two problems with that. Number one, it doesn't factor in, and there is no realistic way to factor in private sales, which happen all the time, which are oftentimes different than public sales. And it also doesn't factor in potential qualitative differences. And I certainly take the time to educate my customers sometimes when they quote comps. I was like, well, show me the card. What does the card look like? Oh, well, that card's grossly off center, whereas the one I'm selling is dead center. Yes, my card is going to have a premium, or I'm going to want a premium for my card over an off-center card, because that's part of what the marketplace is. So I think demand is strong. People are buying cards and I'll go back to, I always root everything from an economics perspective of supply and demand. I think for the higher supply cards, your lower grade and your mid grade cards, vintage cards where there's a really good supply, you can walk into a show and find multiple examples of them. Prices have definitely softened. And customers are looking for a deal, and very frequently they're going to get it. Smarter dealers, I like to think of myself in that group. I have no problem dealing on a card like that. When you're dealing with more unique or special, or let's call it lower supply, particularly higher demand items like Babe Ruth, rare Mickey Mantle, rare Clemente, rare Mace. That kind of stuff, prices are still pretty strong. And I know when I have that stuff, like I'm not in a hurry to negotiate. I'm not in a hurry to sell stuff that's going to be really difficult or sometimes next to impossible for me to replace. Yeah. And I think you see that in the auction houses too. But they're spotty. Back to that imperfection, there's good cards that I feel like have just fallen through the cracks sometimes. I'm starting to see that more. Okay. And sometimes it's smart collectors snapping them up. Sometimes it's smart dealers snapping them up. But it's happening because there's just too much available, too much of the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think your point about the auction houses and whatnot and eBay and you can go to all these different sites now and buy cards. I think your point is if you're a savvy collector or savvy dealer, if you have your tentacles into all these places, you could possibly get an outstanding deal because it might get unnoticed. So I think that is a positive for the buyer's end of things. If you're willing to do the research and the time to go to different places, right?
Yeah, but and I can tell you because I do some of it. Yeah. It's impossible. You can't be in all the places the cards are.
Oh,
you just can't. It's too much.
Yeah,
it's literally too much. There are auctions I just completely ignore because I just don't have time to run my business, to do what I do, to live my life, and to look at every single auction that's out there.
Yeah, I understand. So you brought up an interesting thing that I actually wanted to talk to you about. I have some friends in the hobby that there's really been a big drive with my group of friends on high eye appeal cards that are lower grade. And I know this isn't a brand new concept. It'd be naive to think that way, but I heard it bantered around between collectors and dealers at the show in Strongsville. And I guess my question to you is as a dealer, should all dealers be aware of this, and should all dealers mark up the high eye appeal low grade, and should they mark down low eye appeal, maybe the grade's too high? Should it go both ways? Like, it feels like sometimes dealers want to take advantage of the high eye appeal, but they don't want to give a discount on the low. You get what I'm saying? So
So the problem or the question or the issue starts with the grading companies. And it's sad on a level because they've really succeeded in a way of undermining what they've set out to do.
Yeah.
Right? They wanted to try to objectify the condition of cards. Right? So an 8 is an 8 is an 8 is an 8 is an 8. A 4 is a 4 is a 4 is a 4 is a 4. And it doesn't take long for new collectors to realize that that is absolutely not the case. You know, this 4 and that 4, wow, this one looks so much nicer. So I think the underpinning of the problem is inconsistency in the grading process, which to me, like their first and foremost biggest charge should be consistency. And I think even in a near perfect world, it's never going to be a perfect system, because to a degree, there's a subjective element. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Is a a card with sharper corners more appealing than a card that's better centered? And you ask 20 different people, you're going to get a couple of different answers. You know, some people are going to like the sharper corners and not care about the centering. Other people are going to go nuts over the centering and not care about the sharper corners. So there's already, your starting point is not perfect. Add to that the inconsistency in the grading process, and now we're back to your question, right? A 4 is not a 4, is not a 4, is not a 4. There are really nice 4s, and there are really ugly 4s, and there are cards that I think, let's say, most people would look at and say, okay, yeah, that's a reasonable 4.
Right.
So, you know, what other dealers should do, or what other people should do, that's not for me to dictate. But I think they're short-sighted if they're not factoring eye appeal into their pricing and negotiating process. You know, for example, I will, if I have an average 4, I'm going to put that out there at looking at comps, and not just the numbers, but looking at the cards. And you're starting to see it a lot more when you look at comps. You start to see some grossly different numbers for similarly graded, or cards of the same grade. But you take a look at the cards, you're like, whoa, yeah, that one's way nicer. Holy cow! Of course, that got a huge premium. So when I price my cards, definitely anything with really what I would call really strong eye appeal, I price at a premium. That could be anywhere from 10 to 50%, just depending on the specific card and how nice the eye appeal really is, how strong the card really looks. I'm thinking right now I have two 1954 Willie Mazes. One is like a 2.5 that I have priced, I think, as a 2.5, and the other is a 4 that I have priced at probably like a 6 or a 6.5, because it's just that strong a card.
Wow.
And yes, so it becomes an interesting pricing strategy, let's call it, because there's almost always a negotiation that takes place. So my, let's call it less than stellar 4, I'm going to still put a price tag of a 4, a comp, like call it an average 4. But I'm usually going to be a heck of a lot more flexible, and hopefully if I bought it right, I will have not paid as much as a strong 4. So I'm going to be a heck of a lot more flexible in my negotiation if I have somebody, or when I have somebody interested in that card.
Okay, that's fair. I have an interesting point, because I don't want to put you into a corner, but I feel like you're more of a graded card seller, or at least at the shows. Maybe it's just because that's the amount of table space you have. But there's a guy that has at the Pittsburgh show. He generally has a lot of tables, and at a very small local show in Pittsburgh I go to, he has a lot of space, and he is literally a raw dealer. He has slabs because he's acquired them, but he has all raw cards, and it makes it really weird for me whenever I go to his table, because I'm trying to. It feels like he has it priced as if like this is definitely going to get it's priced as a 5, and you know how grading is today. You almost have to assume you're going to get one less grade, and that's just my opinion. And it makes for a really weird negotiation, to be honest with you. Like, what's your opinion about dealers that try to just sell raw cards, and I guess their thought process is no grading fees, and I get to judge the card. The grading company doesn't get to judge the card, so I might make them pay a 5 price, and it might get a 4. So what? I guess what's your opinion on dealers who go with the raw strategy?
I do sell some raw cards. Definitely the lion's share of what I sell is graded, and that's more a function of what I see as what more of my customers are looking for.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a great thing to sell raw cards. I think there's a lot of people out there that do collect them, particularly set builders, who are looking to put together, VGEX, EX plus sets, and don't want to spend like crazy money just because a card is graded a 5 for a common card.
Right.
That said, I don't know dealers who can successfully, over a period of time, do what you're saying that you've experienced this guy does.
Yeah.
Where you're not. I can't anyway. I don't know. Maybe he's got some magic secret, but there's no way I can sell a card that I think is going to grade a 5 at a price of a graded 5 card. Just doesn't. That's not going to happen for the same point that you're raising. If somebody wants to buy a card graded a 5, you're going to go out and buy a card graded a 5, not one that has a shot. Unless, right now, and here's one of the other angles on the raw cards, right? If you're looking at that card and he's saying he thinks it's going to grade a 5, and you're looking at it like, shoot, yeah, that should grade at least a 5. And he's selling it maybe at a price of a 3.5 or a 4 or a 3, or maybe not going by, let's call it a Beckett raw price, but a lower grade than you believe it's going to get. Well, then that might be an exciting opportunity. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to get it cheaper. I'm going to get it graded, and I have a chance for a win.
It makes sense. So I guess this is kind of a tricky question, and it's fine if you don't have a great answer for it. But do you feel like there's any type of shift as far as how people are collecting, or what players people are collecting, maybe this year compared to last year, or even 2 years ago? Or does it feel pretty consistent in the vintage world?
I want to say, if anything, I feel like it's skewed even more in the direction of where it was last year, and that is big names and big name rookies, Hall of Fame rookies, and the big name Hall of Famers. Your Ruth and Gehrig and Joe Jackson and Honus Wagner and Ty Cobb and Mickey Mantle and Roberto Clemente and Willie Mays and Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks. All your big, like your biggest names. Those are the cards that people are consistently looking for. I have seen, and this is interesting too, a little bit more of a demand, an interest, people looking for cards getting a little more price respect. For some of the more rare or obscure, like the food issues, test issues, stuff that doesn't show up very much. People, I think, are starting to wake up to, oh my God, there's only 10 of those? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, and I have an opportunity to buy one. Why wouldn't I?
Right. That makes sense. I do think like the group of friends that I know that kind of came in during COVID and started doing vintage. I do see some of them starting to work back, like as we talk about, more towards buying more pre-war than ever. Do you feel like that seems like a natural progression as people get further into it? They just keep pushing themselves backwards. Is that what you see a lot?
I think it's different for different people. I think the pre-war, especially, it takes a degree. I'll use the word of sophistication,
Mm-hmm.
education. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to know. There's a lot to learn, and I know because I'm somewhat new to pre-war. My son was 8, he's 17, so I only started in pre-war about 9 years ago. And I can tell you, I can't even tell you how many hours I spent, and there's still more that I don't know than I do know. I'm going to say I know a lot of the tobacco issues reasonably well. I am far from expert like in T206. There's so many nooks and crannies and nuances. The candy cards, the E cards, forget about it. Like, I've barely scratched the surface. And then there's so many other issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's a deep hole. It's awesome. It's fun. I know for myself, I love learning about it. I love the challenge of trying to find some of the cards, because some of them are like crazy hard to find. So
Yeah.
for people, I think, I guess, who are like me in that way, they like the challenge of the hunt, to try to find some of those rarities. Vintage definitely, and pre-war particularly, provides that. There are other people that, they just want to get one of every Mickey Mantle in a 6 or a 7 or a 5, so I think different people, and that's one of the things that's it's existed for as long as the hobby has.
Yeah.
So I think there's a segment of, I'll call it, newer collectors, that naturally kind of makes their way back and discovers vintage, and gets educated, and starts collecting some of that stuff because it's really interesting and intriguing and fun. And some that don't.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm going to shift now to the Strongsville question. So actually, this pertains to what we just talked about. One of the things that some collectors said and made jokes about Strongsville videos was how old the crowd was at Strongsville as far as the buyers go. So a lot of people said, well, no duh. The National's kind of the National has modern at it. So how can you? This is the only time you actually see vintage collectors all together by themselves, really. So, what would you say though about somebody who's getting in the hobby in their 30s, or maybe a dealer in their 30s, and they're worried because the baby boomer segment, I would say, is probably the biggest money and the biggest collections right now. And obviously, the baby boomers are getting older right now. What would you say to somebody saying, "I'm really worried. I'm buying these cards now, and in 20 years, half the collectors are not here anymore. So this might actually be not very smart for me." So what would you say about that, I guess?
So I think part of what necessitates mentioning in response to your question is the question is really based from an investment perspective,
Hmm.
not a collector or collectible perspective. Because if you think about it, when we go and we buy a concert ticket and we go to see a concert, we're not expecting to get money back from that. When we buy a car, it depreciates most of the time.
Right.
We're going to sell it for less money than we bought it for. There's so many things in our life, that we buy, and they either lose value or become valueless over time. So if you think of, or you approach collecting first as a collector, I'm collecting, and it's the way I look at my Clemente collection.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not looking at it. I'm not going to buy or sell because I think the future is going to be good or bad.
Hmm.
I'm collecting it because I love it. And I'm sure there's some stuff I would not be able to get what I paid for it, and there's some stuff I'd be able to get a lot more than what I paid for it. And it doesn't matter to me because that's not why I'm collecting it.
Okay.
So whenever that time comes, whatever it is, it is. Um, Now, if you're approaching it from the investment perspective, so then your question takes on a heck of a lot more relevance. And People have been having this conversation probably for 40 years. uh,
I understand that, but we are coming up against where a
well, we're
big
not
segment.
coming up. We're already probably 10, 20 years in. The oldest baby boomers have been selling off their stuff already for 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Um, so there's already been a ton of stuff entering the market, and like I said, look back at the COVID boom, and the market exploded, and there's more collectors today than there were pre-COVID by far. Like I don't
Mhm.
even. I wish there was a way to quantify it, but just eyeballing it, I don't think it's close. Dude, I think it's exponentially more. Um, that all said, once again, coming back from the investment perspective to the economics perspective of supply and demand. So I think your better bets from an investment perspective are going to be low supply, high demand cards. So back to and there's, we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know that this is going to be the case forever, but it's been the case for a long time where the highest demand cards are your biggest names that we mentioned before. And if you start looking now at some of the supply shortages. So for regular Topps cards, take a look at the populations. Look at some of the higher grade cards. Even though, let's say, a 1956 Mickey Mantle is not a rare card, a 1956 Mickey Mantle whiteback in a PSA 7 or higher is a really tough to find. There's very, very, very little supply of that card in that grade or higher.
Right.
So that, from an investment perspective, starts to look like a more attractive investment. Why? Because even if the speculation, and we don't know, right? It's
Right.
speculating that the market is going to shrink, right? The baby boomers are gonna die off, and the market somehow is going to shrink. Therefore, the demand, right? That speaks to the demand side. Demand is going to decrease. Maybe not. We'll be able to look back 20 years from now and have an educated answer. But when you're looking at the low supply, high demand items, you don't need a lot of people. You don't need that much demand
Right.
to maintain and or grow price.
Right. Makes sense. I think it's a good answer. I just wanted to play the other side of things, and I come at it from a collector standpoint, and I don't worry about my future, whatever that is, whenever I get old enough. But it's a conversation that goes on a lot out there, and I think it's good to cover. So let's talk about Strongsville in general. How did you like the new location?
So it was actually my first time setting up at Strongsville.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was on the wait list for 3 years. I almost did it last year, but by the time they let me know that I could, I was already signed up for Hofstra. So I liked the venue. I thought it was a good location. I liked the show. I thought it was pretty well run. There was definitely a lot of competition in the room. A lot of really great cards in that room.
Yeah, so it's funny you brought that up because I actually had a question about that. So so I actually thought about that as a dealer if I was in that show how I would feel. And I thought to myself, I feel like I would prefer to be at a show that size as a one or two vintage dealer guy in the room than to be in an all vintage show. Is that actually true that you're almost better off being like one of a couple at a show than being at an all vintage show, or does it kind of wash itself out?
I don't look at it that way. And it's interesting. Like I can tell you without getting into too much detail, I lost a very, 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 very large sale because the customer ended up finding something he liked somewhere else more than what we were gonna do.
Yeah.
Like usually I don't even flinch, but like it was big enough I flinched. It's
Uh,
like it bothered me. Um, and at the same time, right? So you can go and think along the lines of what you put out. Well, maybe I should just be a big fish in a small pond,
yeah.
right? Is another way to phrase it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not my takeaway. Like after I got over the hurt or the the fact that I lost that sale, it's like, you know what? I need to sharpen my game. And I think that a show like that with the caliber of cards that were in the room um, can do that. Gives you that. You come face to face, like, all right, dude, like you don't have the best cards in the show. You
Yeah.
have maybe a couple of them, but like there's other people here that got to have some really, really, really good cards.
Yeah.
And To me, it just encourages me to sharpen my game and come back home. Okay, what can I do different? What can I do better? How can I make myself more competitive? How can I make myself stand out more? How do I sharpen my edge?
No, that's good. That's a good takeaway. So, without going into numbers, did you feel good about your total sales leaving the show, or did you expect higher numbers?
So, if the show was not hyped, again, this was my first time doing it.
Yeah.
So the show was hyped so much. I heard so much about it from so many people, and what a great show it was. And it's the next best show after the national. All the accolades I'm sure that have been said ad nauseum
Yeah.
on plenty of channels. If With all that hype, I was expecting a stronger show than I had.
Okay.
Um, if that hype didn't happen, and and I just went to a show that size, I was happy with my sales.
Okay.
If that makes some sense.
No, it does. I think about like an analogy, like there's been comedies, like movies that are comedies that my friends go, that was the funniest movie I've ever seen. So I'm sitting in the movie theater just waiting to laugh, and it almost does the opposite effect. I'm just like I almost wish I would have went to this movie without knowing nothing about it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I kind of get where you're coming from there. So I did it. I guess one of the pieces of feedback I heard from some collectors was they did feel pricing was a little high compared to the current state of the market. You know, I didn't hear that from everybody, but I would say that's one of maybe the complaints I heard. Do you feel like, looking around the room, do you feel like pricing was fair overall with the other dealers you saw in the room and stuff like that, or did you feel it was a little high overall?
So I don't really pay that close attention because I don't really buy that much from other dealers. I can tell you, as a dealer looking to buy from other dealers, to, you know, with some meat on the bone, for me to have some kind of a margin.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm not looking for much. I'm looking, you know, 15-20% margin. I very rarely can pull that off at a show. So that said, I'm probably not the best person to ask in terms of how everybody else was priced. You know, I've heard the same kind of comments that you're referring to, but
Okay.
I'm not a good firsthand source because I don't pay that level of attention to where everybody else has their stuff priced.
No, and I think that's fair. To be fair, you were by yourself at the show, so you really didn't. You really had to stay at your booth. So I could see like also that side of things where you're by yourself and you're watching your table. So
Well,
um,
I did walk around, and a lot of times something that stood out to me about the show that I liked, it was a different mix of dealers than I see usually in the show circuit that I run. And as I am an exclusively vintage dealer, like there was a lot of vintage in the room. So there was also a lot of oddball stuff in the room, which is something, as you know, that I really like. So I did, you know, poke around and look for stuff. I bought a few things, nothing crazy.
okay.
But so it's the kind of show where I definitely did walk around, but I just don't, you know, I'm not looking at, okay, he's got a 56 Jackie Robinson PSA 6, you know, he's asking X, and oh, it should be, he's 20% higher than he should be. Like, I don't go into that level of detail. The stuff I'm usually looking to buy is more unusual. I think I bought like some wire photos and maybe like a ticket stub, like just some weird stuff that is much harder to comp.
Yeah, it makes sense. This might be a hard question for you since you haven't been to that show before, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot. All these questions I'm asking Howard are on the spot, by the way, everybody. If you could talk to the show organizer and he said, just give me just one piece of feedback how we could make this show even better next year, do you have a takeaway that you feel would make the show better for either a dealer or a collector?
Yeah. It would be different answers because you know, it's back to that competition in the room. You know, there's some stiff competition in that room. There were a lot of really good cards, and it was something I heard from guys who have done the show that said it wasn't a shadow of prior shows for them in terms of sales wise, and they also noted like there was a lot of new blood, new dealers in that room with really good material.
Mhm.
So, you know, but I don't feel like it's fair to dealers or consumers to suggest to the promoter, well, you know, have less competition in the room next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
You know, I think to some degree that may naturally work itself out because people who feel like they can't compete just won't come.
Yeah.
I don't think I can. I thought the hours were good. I thought, you know, the space was good. People didn't seem like crowded. The temperature was good. I I really don't know that I could add anything to, you know, from a dealer perspective that would make the show better. You know, in and out as far as loading and unloading was really easy. Um, yeah, I got nothing for there. And for collectors, you know, I don't know if it's anything the promoters really control, but you know, I know collectors are always looking for better prices. So, like I said, I don't know that promoters really have anything to do with that. Maybe they could do some kind of like door prizes. I know that's something I've suggested at other shows, and they do it. I know at least in Chantilly, where they can do door prizes of what I term dealer dollars. They give away 10, 20, 30, 50, whatever amount they want, dollars in gift certificates that basically need to be spent at dealer tables. So it's plus because the consumer gets whatever certificate they're winning. They then go spend that money with the dealer. The dealer redeems it with the promoter. So the dealers get extra cash, and the promoter is making both his customer walking in the door as well as his dealer happy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did hear something really cool, and I from somebody, and they said they kind of liked the fact that there wasn't a loudspeaker that just kept saying. And I understand door prizes don't have to be constant, but he said like it really felt like you went back like 20, 30 years and you were at a show and there's not constant intercom like saying blah 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 over the intercom. There was only like 2 vendors there. There was like 2 auction houses and SGC there, and it kind of, I think that old timey feel of like this is just about the cards and collecting cards, and like kind of took away all the like other stuff. Like I kind of thought that was a pretty cool thing that somebody said.
There were actually 4 auction houses there.
Oh, 4 auction houses, okay. But yeah, but you didn't have all the, you didn't have PSA there. You didn't have, you know what I mean? It was kind of cool. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I think part of that, the probably, or the way they did the autograph guests, it was a lot smaller scale than some of the larger shows. And yeah, it was definitely not as much, let's call it noise in the room.
Yeah. I was disappointed that the concession stand didn't sell beer. I was like, that would have been a nice add-on, but I don't, they're an ice garden, so I'm not sure if they even have a license or anything like that. And I think the other big complaint was the hotel next door, which has been the hotel that was used for the show before, but the rooms weren't very nice. Everybody said the elevator didn't work. There was just a lot of problems with the hotel area, but everybody said they would go back. So
yeah, the hotel left a little bit to be desired. My room was my room was okay. The only thing with my room, I went to call the front desk and recognized that I didn't have a phone in my room. And,
wow.
I took the elevator down, which, as you mentioned, wasn't working a number of times over the weekend. And I go down to the front desk. I'm like, hey, I don't have a phone in my room. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Hang on a second. And he hops on his phone. And he comes back. And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. We don't have any more phones in the hotel.
What? We don't have any more phones.
So it wasn't the end of the world. It's fine. I have my cell. Like, if I needed the front desk or something, it would have been a little bit of a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of interesting. And it didn't happen to me, but I know a friend of mine. I want to be very loose here, not name names because I don't know what he does or doesn't want public. But he had something shipped to the hotel, and there was like a little bit of a mix-up, and somebody from the hotel, and it was something he needed for the show. Somebody from the hotel ended up refusing the package, and it got sent back. So he didn't have stuff he needed. Yeah, so that was quite frustrating. But yeah, no, breakfast was good. My room was okay outside of the lack of phone. Yeah, it was okay. It's no frills, but it is kind of is what it is.
That is funny. Yeah. So let's bring it in now. I just want to know, now that you've done that show and we've talked about the Philly show, the Pittsburgh show, the Boston show, I'd really like to know, outside the national, give me your top 3. If you're a collector and you want to see vintage cards and you want to see oddball vintage cards, give me your number 1 show you should go to, the number 2, number 3 that you know of. Like, obviously there's stuff on the West Coast that you probably can't speak to sometimes. So what would you tell somebody?
Including Strongsville?
Yeah, including Strongsville, just no national. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to say number 1 is Philly.
Yep.
Number 2 is Strongsville.
Okay.
And number 3 is Shriner Auditorium, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, that's close to Boston?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's helpful for people out there that are just kind of like can only go to a couple shows a year and kind of get an idea. So let's talk a little bit about the national. I think it's about 90 days away, maybe a little bit less. Last time we talked, because it's a smaller venue, you weren't sure yet if you were going to be a dealer there. Are you going to be a dealer there?
Thank you for following up. Yeah, I was biting my nails, man. April 1st, I got the phone call that I got in. And I was one of just a handful of priority twos that did. So I am counting my lucky stars.
Wow.
I'll be at booth 1042.
That's crazy. So, are you ready for it, or do you feel like your inventory is not where it needs to be right now for it, or how you feeling about getting ready for the show? I guess.
Um, Inventory wise, I'm ready for it. I mean, I always, it's interesting. I no matter how big a space I have, I seem to always be able to fill it up and not have enough room for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's more about strategically planning. I also have, and I'm not ready to announce it yet, but I'm going to have something like crazy, crazy, crazy super special for the national. That's going to be very, 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 very well publicized ahead of the national. So it's just really about kind of preparing and planning. I like draw out table diagrams and what, decide ahead of time what I'm going to put where. So in terms of inventory wise, I have plenty of inventory. It's just really about laying out the display space.
Nice. Do you have this about the same size space as Chicago last year, or less space?
I don't recall how big Chicago was. I believe what I have this year is a 10 by 15 spot, so it's 150 square feet. I know in Philly I have a 10 by 20, so it's 200 square feet, and I can fill that up no problem. So
Okay.
it's not a function of can I fill it up? It's a question of deciding what I'm going to fill it up with.
Makes sense. So, we kind of touched on this last time, but I know some people don't catch every episode, which makes a lot of sense. So, we have a lot of new guys that have never been to Cleveland. Could you just give everybody just like what the Cleveland space looks like, just so we have an idea of what the room looks like and what to expect?
So I think it's going to be, in terms of from a navigation standpoint, easier than Chicago. I don't think it's going to be like as fragmented, let's say, as Chicago was, with multiple different rooms and different size rooms. As best I remember Cleveland, it's been a couple of years since I was there, but it's like a giant rectangle. So it should be, I hope, a little easier to navigate than Chicago was. It is a little smaller than Chicago, which was also part of why I was biting my nails till April 1st about getting in. There will be less dealers than there were in Chicago, just because they don't have the physical space there to put more in. So other than that, the venue is very easy to get to. I think parking for me last time was incredibly easy. You don't have any hotels that are like super, super close, but there's also, there's stuff within 8, 10, 15 minutes. Like it's not crazy. Yeah, it's been historically a very comfortable venue.
Nice. Awesome. I can't wait. So we're gonna end with looking at some cards here, some of your pickups. So why don't we start with you brought along some stuff that you have that's coming up that you just got from consignment recently, or you might have bought off of somebody and you're going to be selling it. So do you want to show us some stuff?
Sure.
Yep.
Let's see where to start. Well, this was a pickup from Strongsville. I got this as part of a cash trade deal. Just a really, really, really nice eye appeal to the point of our conversation before. PSA 7, 1939 Hank Greenberg.
Wow.
So it's a little, you don't usually see them that high grade. So that's pretty cool. And this is a consignment piece. Really nice 1954 Red Heart mantle. This one is off center, which is why I think it got dinged for the with the 5. Because if you look at the corners and edges, it's super, super, super sharp. The color on it is really, really nice.
That's what I was going to say. I love the color on that.
Yeah, if you can deal with the centering, that's a great one. That's a consignment card. Another consignment card. not one you see. Yeah, that's not one you see in that grade very often.
Is that a 9?
That's a 9.
Wow. Yeah.
So, like I said, I'm ready for the national. This is another consignment card. This is insane. This is top 1 of 2.
Oh my gosh.
Highest graded.
Somebody's listening right now. It's an Ernie Banks rookie card. So.
Yeah, an SBC 9. Like I said, there's only one other one.
What? Not that most people care, but can I see the back also? That one?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that's so green. Wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a stunner of a card.
Oh my gosh. Yep. Wow.
Then we get into my my more fun favorite stuff, oddball stuff, and I think you'll like this one. This is a salesman sample panel. This is the only one graded by PSA.
Yeah, I stared at that at Strongsville because I'm my second PC is Dick Grote, so they're both obviously on there. Yeah, and it's
so
a outside. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say this is, like I said, the only one graded by PSA. There is one graded by SGC, which is in my PC, which is the only reason this is for sale.
Wow, that is a cool
Yeah,
piece right
super rare early Clemente piece.
Yeah.
Then this next one kind of was what made my Strongsville show. Even before the Strongsville show, I drove out to Indiana in order to get this. This is a 1960 Mickey Mantle bazooka box. I'm gonna turn it to the different side so you can see the condition this thing is in is absolutely insane. It looks like it never had gum in it. It is the better of only 2 known examples, and it's the second bazooka box Mantle was ever on, 59 being the first.
Unbelievable. I got to see that in person. It is awesome. And I assume you're just going to keep it like that and eventually sell it like that. You're not going to fold it down for PSA or.
That's interesting. As I think we've probably discussed before, as inconsistent as PSA is with regular cards, they are ridiculous with some of the complete boxes. And it's a catch-22 because so many people just want their stuff slabbed. So my intention is, for now, I also think it looks so much better in 3D like this. I have a custom acrylic display case ordered for it to keep it just like it is. And I will market it just like it is. And we'll see down the road. If I don't have a taker, I may have to consider getting it slabbed.
Yeah. It just, I understand your pain there. Is that all for the consignment stuff, or
that's all for the consignment and for sale stuff? Yeah.
Cool. So obviously you've been on my channel before to show Clemente stuff, and I definitely want to get you back on because we only did the tip of the iceberg. We can go down some other roads and stuff, so we're definitely gonna have to do that here. Maybe after the national or before the national, but. You recently got a few big Clemente pickups to add to your PC. Did you bring them with you?
I brought a couple of them. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, let's check them out.
All right. So the first one is an SGC 7. This is a 1957 Cons. It's the first Cons Wieners Clemente, and these were usually packaged in packages of hot dogs. So par for the course is low-grade examples, 1s, 2s. To find a 7, this 7 is actually a Pop 1 highest graded by SGC. And there's only, for PSA, there's only 3 6s are the highest graded. So I couldn't, I had I think a PSA 5 in my master set, but this was too nice. I just couldn't resist. I don't generally buy duplicates, but yeah, this one, I just couldn't let go.
Isn't that? I'm probably mixing up my stuff here, but didn't they do the mail-in ones later years, and that was during when you couldn't mail in, or was that while you could mail in? So that could have been a mail-in one.
No, you couldn't mail in for the 57s. They started the mail in, I believe, in 61, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, that's what I thought you said. Okay.
Yeah.
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 How the heck did that come out with no?
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
think so.
it clearly was not in a package of hot dogs. There's no evidence of it being in a package of hot dogs, and
Yeah.
there's a handful of cards in the wiener world of cards. There's occasional examples that a salesman might have kept, like somebody who worked for the company. They're exquisitely rare. Like you almost never see them. And that's part of what struck me. When I tell you, like I think there's only one other card, a 1971 Clemente, that I have duplicates of in my collection. I really don't do dupes, but just this card was so unique in its high grade and in the condition, and you just never see them like this. So it's really like an anomaly of sorts that clearly was never in a package of hot dogs. All we could do is theoretically speculate how it was saved.
No, that's crazy. That's awesome. Okay, what do you got next?
And next was, I think, the thing I've been most excited about since my acquiring that 1960 Bazooka box. And it was really interesting because the search for this kind of started on the heels of that. Somebody then asked me, so what's next after a 30-year search and finally finding that 1960 Bazooka box? And I was kind of bothered by the question initially because I didn't really have a chance to truly soak in and enjoy my finding the 60 Bazooka. But I certainly had to consider the question at a point, so I did, and came up with a very, very short list of things that theoretically existed that I had never seen before. One of those things was a 1962 complete Jello box, and this was a public post, I think, on Net 54. And somebody was kind enough and actually had saved an ad from Sports Collectors Digest from, I think, 1985. If you can imagine that. This is only about 3 years ago. So they had that ad saved, almost 40 years. And an old dealer named Lou Lipsett had come to market back then with a collection of not only complete Jello boxes, but they were uncirculated. They never had Jello in them. And he had one of each of the ones that he had, and he had most of the big name players. So I saw, Clemente was on the list. I think it sold for like $200 or something like that back in 1985. But I got all excited because I was like, wow, now it exists.
Yeah.
So that was about a year before it came to market, and I tapped whatever resources I had trying to find its whereabouts or its possible whereabouts, praying that nobody cut it out to try to get a 10. Fast forward, shorter version of a longer story, it ended up being in an auction some number of months ago. I don't remember how long ago. Yeah, I had to do battle for it, but and it's probably the most I've ever spent on anything for my collection. But there it is, and I firmly believe it's literally a one of a kind as a complete box. Not even factoring in the fact that it's uncirculated in such amazing condition.
Wow, that is awesome. Didn't that auction have like a Hank Aaron and a Maze also, or were they different
So
years?
it was very interesting because it wasn't the same auction, but I want to say like weeks earlier, the Maze and the Aaron showed up in a different auction. And a client of mine actually grabbed both of those. And a couple weeks later, the Clemente showed up. And ironically, I have another client who owned the mantle. And I ended up brokering a deal and selling that for him.
Wow, that's amazing. That's an awesome box, and that's so cool that you have it now, man. I'm super excited for you. Did you have to get that added to the registry because nobody ever found one?
I did. It's literally. I mean, it's the only one graded, and as I mentioned, if you look at the 62 boxes, there's only a couple of players with more than that single known example, and for sure nothing that remotely touches the condition. The ones from that finder, because they were all uncirculated. They were all like never folded into a box.
Insane. Wow. Did you have any other Clemente pickups recently, or was that it?
That was it.
Cool. Well,
These days it's quality over quantity.
no, I just wanted to make sure I didn't close it out and you had something else sitting there. I recently got this in the mail. Very, very low. You guys know me out there. I got a lower budget than Howard. I finally got my Canadian Post serial Clemente card there. Same image as the box you just showed. I'm actually going to get this graded. It's got no creases, no wrinkles. You could see the border. I think it's going to actually get a number, but you never know. But
that's nice. That's a tough card.
Yeah,
and that's one of the that was one of the things on my theoretical short list of not the card itself. I have the card, but to find that as part of a complete panel of cards from the back to the cereal box, or even better, a whole cereal box with card on it.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, I'd love to see that too. So Howard, you know, he gave us a lot of great. He's a great resource. He gave us his time today. As always with any guest, Howard, please plug either if you have Facebook, Instagram, website, and I'll post them down below if anybody's looking. But yeah, go ahead and give us a quick plug if people want to look for your cards.
So I am Howard Chasser, just first name, last name on Facebook. I'm involved quite actively in a number of different groups there. I have an eBay store since 1998. Username there is favorite_things. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'll be at booth 1042 at the National.
1042. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And my friend Matt from the card store, he actually bought a Hank Aaron from you at Strongsville, but he wanted me to give a plug. You have a group on there. It's an oddball group on Facebook. I think you guys are up to maybe 3,000 or so followers on Facebook. Matt said it's a must follow. So find Howard and join that oddball group if you're into oddball issues. So.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing for me because I'm not super tech savvy. I know a little bit more than some, but nowhere near as much as like you guys who do this stuff. And I went looking for that group like a little over a year ago. Because like somebody, you know, with all the different groups out there, somebody has to be doing this. And nobody was. I couldn't find anything. I was like, oh my God, how is that possible? I have to start it. And I didn't have any kind of plan of growing it into anything. I just wanted it to be like kind of a place where guys like me who really appreciate and love oddball stuff could come and just kind of share stuff. Didn't even care in terms of buying, selling, whatever. Like if that happens, fine. But like, let's just share it because some of it's so rare. Like you just never get to see it. So what a great place to share collections. And yeah, it's gotten some legs. So it's kind of cool. We have over 3,000 members, and there's like always cool stuff being shared. And I love it. Like that's that collector part of me where, you know, I love seeing stuff I didn't know existed or I have never seen before, you know, et cetera, et cetera. There's just some great stuff and some great people. Like some guys I know with just extensive collections sharing very generously, you know, pictures of what they have.
That is awesome. That's great. It's all about the community, and I think that's great to have that other community out there. So try to check that out. Once again, guys, thank you for watching. Give the video a like if you like it. I appreciate it, and I'm getting close to 1,000 subscribers. So if you could hit the subscribe button, I'd appreciate it if you like this type of content. So thanks again, Howard, and I'll see everybody on the next one.
My pleasure, Theo. Thank you.